With all the evidence we have of a warming Earth, it's harder and harder to be a skeptic these days.
Derek, if it's safe for you to take us through this situation, please do so.
All right, Chris, I feel like I'm feeling the backwash of a jet engine. It just stings every time when these gusts come through. It's picking up. Let me explain. Here's another image. You can just see the towering pyrocumulonimbus clouds that have formed from the bushfires that are ongoing on the ground. Transformers were blowing around us. It looked like fireworks lighting up the sky, and then instantly it went dark. We have now joined the hundreds of thousands of others on the North Carolina coast without electricity. The other concern is the strong gusty winds near hurricane force for Cape Cod. A lot of times in these severe storms as well, they're rain wrapped, so they're often hidden behind a shaft of rain that often just disguises the tornado as well. By the way, that footage that you saw a moment ago was called a wedge tornado, and those tornadoes are classified by being wider than they are tall.
Hey!
Not a bad day at the office.
No, this is amazing.
But traversing untouched mountainous terrain comes with its challenges. That's why Steamboat Powder Cats enlist expert guides and specialized machinery.
If you can hear me, tell us what you're seeing.
Hey, John, good afternoon. Listen, we're in Apalachicola, and we have sustained hurricane force winds where we are, but what's the most surprising and the most astounding, to be quite honest, is how quickly the storm surge has taken over this town.
Yeah, I mean, how rough does it get up there?
Well, it's that moment when you punch through the eye wall, the strongest part of the storm. You start to shake, you start to rattle. Obviously, you're belted in the seats, but the turbulence there is rough. I'm with Officer Medina, and he's been on the search and rescue boat all day long. I'm just wondering if you can tell me a couple of the stories that you've had today in the rescues.
We had situations of rescuing people out of attics.
But I've talked to people that say that the water levels have risen all the way to the second floor, or at least the tops of the first floor. So why would people want to stay, especially with rain coming down like this?
We'll go see here in a second. We're going to start going down there.
You can see the families riding by now. There are still several more people to come. You can imagine. The rain has stopped here, but that doesn't mean the threat's over. Because the water that is dumped into this region, over 15 trillion gallons of water, enough, by the way, to fill up the Great Lakes another foot, is still racing down the rivers and estuaries. We are 7,000 feet above the northern Bahamas in the center of major Hurricane Joaquin. The storm has been notoriously difficult to predict.
Dirk, how often do they actually go out? Because I understand they've been out several times already.
Yeah, Anderson, hurricane hunters fly out to Joaquin and other storms just like Joaquin at least 2 times a day. In fact, they have the ability to fly to 3 separate storms from the international dateline over the Central Pacific all the way to the mid-Atlantic. I don't need to state the obvious here, but we are officially in hurricane conditions. I'm CNN meteorologist Derek Van Dam in Fish Creek Falls in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and this is CNN. The trademark champagne powder they keep talking about. Low density, high fluff, maximum fun.
CNN meteorologist Derek Van Dam. He is braving the elements outside our studio. It is brutal out there.
It is. Good morning, Michaela. I'm actually having to remind myself that I actually volunteered to do this today outside.
When it's this cold and you talk outside, like your mouth doesn't necessarily, the words don't actually form. Right?
And your fingers don't work.
Your fingers don't work.
Tweeting is very difficult.
But that is,
and this fountain usually freezes once or twice during the winter. It's just that the temperatures usually fluctuate, allowing for those icicles to eventually melt on their own. It's just that this cold snap that we've had has been so prolonged that it hasn't had an opportunity to melt. So we see the spectacular display behind us. Degrees, but this will be no easy feat considering that we have had record-setting temperatures so far in 20. Regardless of where it ends up making landfall, the entire country needs to be on high alert.
What is this exactly that you're witnessing there, Derek?
All right, Anna, so what you're watching is the District 1 in Harris County. The constable is with one of the high water rescue boats, and basically they've used this as a staging point for the rescue. So they go out to all the individual homes, everybody impacted by the rising floodwaters, and you can see that they're saving anyone from small children to full adults and even their pets as well and their most important belongings.
All right, Derek Van Dam again in Houston. Thank you very much for that. Great to see that rescue happen. Again, right here on live TV.
Just speaking to some of the people that we huddled with when we were being evacuated or moved into the center of our hotel as a safety measure, it's incredible. These people moved, evacuated from Irma 2 weeks ago from St. John's, an island just to our east, came to San Juan to seek shelter and refuge from Irma, and then all of a sudden they're faced with this monster of a hurricane, Hurricane Maria, that comes barreling through. So there's a lot of sadness that they've had to deal with this, but a lot of human spirit that's going to rise up over this tragedy that's affected this island.
Derek Van Dam in Puerto Rico for us. Derek, thank you very much. Now I want to go.
Look at the streets behind me. You can see we've had measurements within the past hour of about 6.5 feet above low tide. So high tide hasn't even occurred yet. And really creating some concern. So we still have that as it coincides with high tide that's actually already passed, but nonetheless, the east-facing bays and inlets of this island region continuing to see the impacts of storm surge. Here's the science behind what I'm trying to explain to you. The intense heat caused from the bushfires rises similarly to what we would experience within a thunderstorm. That's called an updraft. As the last round of negotiations here in Durban, South Africa are underway. Now, the beginning of this conference really started out about the science, but that has now shifted towards the politics and the economics behind climate change.
Ambitious measures here in Durban.
All right, great. Thank you, Mr. Pesco. We'll leave it there. Joanne, you heard it at COP17, the last day of negotiations. There is indeed enough science in the fourth assessment reports released in 2007 for heads of state to make drastic decisions going forward into the negotiations tonight. Back to you. Now, if we warm to 2 degrees Celsius or even beyond that, what does that mean for our oceans?
So corals in particular are very...
CNN meteorologist Derek Van Dam with it, the Georgia Aquarium.
Derek, we keep coming back to this fact that the aircraft, the pilot asked to change route because of weather.
Yeah, and that really can be confirmed, Aisha, because there was very turbulent weather across that region at the last point of contact for AirAsia Flight 8501. Look at the eye wall of this storm. It appears it's doing more of a westerly track. We are in the thick of the eye wall right as we enter into the strongest part of the storm, and we were busy doing a live shot a few minutes ago, and the worst of the storm is still yet to come.
Love it.
3 words for you: pumpkin spice latte.
It's time.
My favorite. Yes,
Has it
I can't
started
wait.
already?
Yes, it has.
It's time.
I've already ordered mine. If I can use an analogy, when we bundle up at nighttime in our nice blankets, keeping ourselves warm, rip that blanket off, and then all of a sudden that heat that you had escapes right back into the atmosphere. That's exactly what's happened over the eastern half of the U.S. We don't have any cloud cover to keep us warm. The blanket per se, it's just not there.
No blanket, very cold. All right, so
you can hear behind me the plows are in full force. Music to the ears of the governor and the people of New York City, because it's clearing the streets, but it's almost futile, Rosemary and Errol, because by the time that they're done plowing, the snow just accumulates right back on the ground again. At night, people have the opportunity to drop their swimsuits, because clothing is optional after dark.
Derek, you crazy reporter here. I didn't know.
You stick around long enough, you'll see plenty of full moons, I believe that.